what I just told you was about my current institution, which is a B school. I have worked with you for 5 years. The culture there was totally different. So if I had to answer this same question from the perspective of DU, it would have been a totally different answer. Although a lot of people believe that जो हम लिखते हैं वो तो सिर्फ छप जाता है और छपना जो छपता है वो तो सिर्फ अगेन वही रिसर्चर्स ही पेपर पढ़ रहे होते हैं वही लिख रहे होते हैं वही पढ़ रहे होते हैं but it's not the case. Pedagogical skills means how are you delivering your sessions? How are you interacting with your students? How are you making sure that whatever you are saying in the class or whatever you're doing in the class goes into their mind and just does not like pop, pop, pop and like this. But let me tell you that there have been studies on not specifically for UG, but there have been studies on the cause and effect relationship between your CAT scores and your final placements, the kind of placements that you get, the kind of packages that you get, and there's no relationship between them. We are using AI for the purpose of convenience. There's a very small percentage of students who are actually using AI for the purpose of enhancing their own mental capabilities, their own potential, and their own learning.
The kid is not learning those emotions, is not learning those abilities to take decisions, to problem solve. You just ask, you get an answer. So the kid has become used to actually sort of becoming a robot where you're just asking, there's a question, answer, do this, right? Yes. And that's a scary future. Hello everyone, I am Toshika.
I'm Akhila.
And welcome to At the End of the Day podcast. Today we have with us Ms. Varda Sardana. Varda is a professor at Jaipuria Institute of Management. She has worked with a lot of other colleges as well in the past. She is a social activist. She is a public speaker, a TEDx speaker, in fact, and a very, very fun person. And we are really excited to have you here with us, Varda, today. Thank you for coming to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Toshika and Akhila, for having me. I'm really, really looking forward to this conversation.
So, diving right into it, we would first want you to introduce yourself, whatever you want to highlight across to our audience.
Okay, so I would like to introduce myself as a person with a dual personality. So I am a Gemini and I truly stick to the main characteristics, personality trait of Gemini that they have a dual personality. So on one side, I have a very professor, academic rigor, researcher kind of a personality, wherein when I am with my students, when I'm in my classroom, when I'm at my workplace, or when I'm with my colleagues outside my workplace, I'm a very simple, straightforward, responsible, hardworking, and sincere girl who, who is strict with her students, specifically when it comes to marks and teaching. But I have another side to me, which is a very fun-loving, cheerful person who likes to reignite the kid in herself whenever I get the chance. So if you meet me outside of my workplace and outside of my professional, character, you will find me as a very fun-loving, cheerful, outgoing girl who likes to crack jokes, like to take jokes on herself, like to dance, and just do all random stuff, including playing pranks on others. Yes, that's me.
Do your students know the other side to you?
Sometimes when I am in the classroom, the other side by mistakes gets revealed. So when I'm in the mood, when I'm in that fun mood, when I'm cracking a joke which is related to my subject, the fun side sometimes just crops up and I have to suppress it. And so some of the students who are in regular connect with me, who are my mentors, mentees, they are the ones who sometimes get to know that side of me. But then I try to keep that as a secret from them until unless they graduate and then they become like an alumni. So yeah.
Okay, I think that's a very good description of who you are as a person. Probably, I think initially let's start a little bit about your career. And first of all, if you could help us understand, what does a typical day in your life look like?
Okay, so typically, so the day can be of two types. One is that we know when we are having classes. So obviously, I'm a professor, so my first task is to take classes at my institution. And in addition to that, as an academician, we also have responsibilities to do research and contribute to the administrative work of the college. So when we do have classes, that's our main priority. We go to the institution as per our class timings, we take the class, address all the doubts, queries, evaluations, and all that stuff. But then when we do not have classes, so we in our institution we have that flexibility to choose the trimesters in which we are going to take classes. So in those trimesters wherein I don't have classes, for example, this trimester in the month of January I don't have any classes, it's a more laid out day because in that case I can plan my day according to my own priorities, which includes when I want to do research, on what kind of research papers I want to work on, and if there are any administrative responsibilities, how do I want to schedule them to make the most of my day. And that ways it also allows me to have some time for myself, maybe doing some exercises. I do some exercises in my college as well sometimes, and my eating habits. So it's usually the day is usually very laid out depending upon what kind of schedule the institution has given us.
Got it. So you also mentioned, like you're basically, I think, as a professor, there are three primary things you're involved in. One is classes, which is the main thing. Second is research, which is obviously very important. And the third, you talked about administrative support, right? What kind of administrative support generally do you have to get involved in? And is it compulsory for all the professors to do it, or is it more like a voluntary thing that you do?
So it's a combination of both. So first I'll talk about what kind of administrative activities I'm talking about, and then I'll come to, is it compulsory or is it forced or it's voluntary. So the administrative activities usually involve a combination of taking part in admission activities, placement activities, mentorship activities, and other co-curricular plus academic activities in the institution, which includes organizing some kind of conclaves, or conferences, research conferences, or other FDPs, that is faculty development programs. So because we are directly involved with the students in teaching, we are also expected to help in the admission process of the college. So it's a B school, so the GDPIs are supposed to take place for the admission process. So the teachers, the faculties are the ones who are required to interview the students, because we are the ones who are going to teach them. We are the ones who know the kind of students that the institution should intake, and the kind of knowledge that they should possess to be able to pursue an MBA degree. So that's why we come in the picture. During the mentorship process, so we have the students are allocated to us as mentees, and we help them in their career to prepare them for their interviews during the time of placement, during the time of their internship, and if they're having any other sort of issues in their personal, professional, social life. So that is another work. And obviously during the time of placements, we prepare them by taking mock interviews, mock GDs, wetting their CVs, ensuring that everything is up to the mark, including their grooming before they sit for their internships or placements. And yeah, obviously apart from that, there are some activities going on in the college, some finance conclaves or some conferences, networking events. So all of these are the platforms where we have to come to the picture and again contribute in managing the entire event, from hospitality to academic exchanges. So this is where the administrative responsibilities usually derive from. Now, as far as the mandatory or voluntary aspect is concerned, so obviously we are expected to contribute to it. So it's like something that is a part of our responsibilities as academician. It's not something that has been forced upon us, but we are also given flexibility in the sense that we are allowed to choose the dates on which we can contribute to those placement activities or admission activities, depending upon our other priorities. So if I know that I'm on leave for a specific week, or if I have some other engagements, I can always say that these two other dates are not available, but these two other dates where you can shift my duties to. So that swapping, that flexibility is always allowed to us, which is something that I really like and something that never puts a burden on us.
Yeah, that makes sense. In fact, I think I am from DU. I've done an undergraduation, but I don't think like there it's not a culture that all of your professors are this dedicated when it comes to like post your degree placements and stuff like that, right? You can reach out to for help, but they are not always like this. So I think it's really good to know that at least in business schools, professors are, putting in so much time and effort with the
So what
students.
I just told you was about my current institution, which is a B school. I have worked with you for 5 years.
Yeah.
The culture there was totally different. So if I had to answer this same question from the perspective of DU, it would have been a totally different answer. Yeah, these are two totally different cultures that I've faced in my work life.
Uh, I have a question, Vardha, that how much of these research papers that are made, uh, how much of them actually actually make a difference in the real world, or is it more or less limited to academia?
See, when we do research, our main aim is to have some kind of practical implications from that research paper.
Hmm.
Practical implications in the sense something that can actually reach out to the corporates or to the government or to the policymakers and tell them that, see, this is what we have done, these are the results that we have got, and on the basis of these results, you should make these differences in your organization, your working style, or your overall policy. This is our
Hmm.
main aim of doing a research. Practical implications should be there. If
Right.
not practical implications, certain social implications should be there. Social implication in the sense that the society, anyone who reads the paper should know that, okay, this is what is happening in the society and this is how it should happen or this is how it should not happen. So when we do research, our main aim is to make an impact, have an implication or consequence either for the practical angle or from the societal angle, or if none of these, at least from the theoretical angle. Theoretical
Hmm.
angle means that we are contributing to the academic side, wherein if I'm researching about something, let's assume because I research in corporate governance and banking. So if I'm researching something on banking, whatever are the outcomes of my research, if they're not directly impacting the banks, if they're not directly giving some recommendations to the society, at least whoever reads the research paper gets some understanding, better understanding about the banks. How do banks
Right.
Right.
operate? What are the banks' risks? So
Right.
whenever we do research, it is always emphasized that it should have some outcomes which are having implications for the society, for practice purposes, or academic or theoretical purposes. These are the three things that we have to specify. So yeah, it's not just limited to academia. Although a lot of people believe that जो हम लिखते हैं वो तो सिर्फ छप जाता है और छपना जो छपता है वो तो सिर्फ अगेन वही रिसर्चर्स ही पेपर पढ़ रहे होते हैं, वही लिख रहे होते हैं, वही पढ़ रहे होते हैं. But it's not the case. Good research papers do get a lot of audience from the corporate side, industry side, societal side, government side, regulatory institution side as well, and they use these papers for their policy making and for changing their own work environments.
So now the main question, how does one become a professor?
Okay, so if you just search this question on any search engine or maybe social media, because of social media पे लोगों को बहुत सारे answers मिल जाते हैं, whether it's Instagram or any other website. So there's a very simple process. ठीक है, you do your graduation, you do your masters, and you give your NET JRF examination. NET stands for National Eligibility Test. And JRF is along with NET, which stands for Junior Research Fellowship. And JRF is something that you need to get. It's not like a need mandatory kind of a thing, but you might like to have if you want to pursue your research degree, whether it's MPhil or PhD. So ये तीन stages होते हैं: graduation, post graduation, which you can call masters, and then your NET JRF, and then some of the universities. No, that's it. Yeah, उसके बाद कुछ नहीं. हाँ, यही है. Once you qualify NET, you are then eligible to apply to colleges, institutions, and university, and they take your interviews, and that's it. If you get selected, you're there, right? बस ये process होता है. But then सुनने में, दिखने में, लिखने में बहुत simple है ये process. There's a lot of details and complexities and a lot of biases that get into this process, because आप पोस्ट ग्रेजुएशन तक तो इनफैक्ट नेट जेआरएफ तक भी आपके हाथ में है सब कुछ. यू आर द वन हु इज गिविंग द एग्जामिनेशन, यू आर द वन हु इज कंप्लीटिंग अ डिग्री. ठीक है, नेट जेआरएफ क्लियर कर लिया, यहाँ तक सब आपके हाथ में है. But once it comes to the recruitment, once there are vacancies and you start applying to the vacancies, a lot of factors start coming into the picture. For example, there are some institutions. Now I won't distinguish between universities, B schools, I'll just say institutions, right? There are some institutions which want you to have a PhD degree before they can hire you. So good institutions want you to have a PhD degree, which means कि नेट जेआरएफ पे आपकी जर्नी खत्म नहीं होगी, आपको PhD के लिए अप्लाई करना पड़ेगा. You'll have to get enrolled into a PhD, or you must have a PhD degree, or if not a PhD degree, you must be at the final stages of your PhD. You are like at that stage jahan pe you have a good research idea, you know what you're doing, and you know that you'll be getting a PhD degree soon. So if you want to get hired in such good institutions and they have this requirement, then you'll have to take that additional step of getting a PhD degree. Now, there are some institutions who do not want you to have a PhD degree. They are like, net JRF hai, great, come apply. But then when they're going through your CV, they specifically look if you have a research track, as in the sense that, do you have some research publications? Even if you are not a PhD yet, you are just a master's, you're done your MPhil. Do you have some research? Are you doing some research? Are you adding value to that body of knowledge or not? So they get lenient on the PhD side, but they check your research papers, your past research papers. Then there are some institutions who are looking forward to your marks, graduation, post-graduation, interview, your net JRF. So again, they may make a list of students as per the list that they've received, and then they may classify them. ये तो बहुत ही academically strong background से है, इनका तो बहुत अच्छा academic record रहा है. These are not so academically strong, and then this is the way they choose. So what happens inside the interview room? What happens when you submit your CV is something that most of the times is a black box. Sometimes you get to know as per the past experiences of the other people who have been hired, but most of the times it's a black box. So that's why you'll have to be up on the toes. You'll have to be up in your game, which means that if you want to be recruited in a good institution of your choice, apart from good grad, good PG marks, and a good score in net JRF, you should also have a PhD degree. Or if you do not have a PhD degree, you should at least be enrolled into a PhD degree and should have a good research rigor to prove that you can add value to that institution, not only in terms of teaching, but also in terms of research.
Yeah, I think that's probably why we have this podcast as well. So that
Yes.
People understand the ground reality of things, right? I think, like you said, online there's a lot of there, but now if you think about it, it's not that easy to become a
It's
professor.
not. Nobody talks about kitna important hai PhD, and research is now so important.
So I think since we talked about for anybody to even become a professor, there's a lot of studies that you need to do, right? It's not just one test after that also, which in itself is going to take a lot of years, right? Now, if somebody has a corporate experience, let's say it could be either in HR, any corporate experience, and then they want to shift to academia, do they still need to follow the same steps, or is this process a little different for them?
So if you are already working in industry, which means you have a good industry experience. Now, these kind of people, these kind of people are valued in B schools.
Okay.
Again, I cannot talk about universities. वहाँ पे I'm not sure. Specifically under graduation, if you talk about undergraduation in universities, they're more focused on, students are more focused on getting a degree, teachers are more focused on getting the syllabus completed and then checking the papers and all that stuff. And some of the students want to get placed, some of the students want to study further, some of the students want to just give competitive examinations. They have a diverse set of career paths in front of them. But when you talk about a B school, which is giving you an MBA or a PGDM degree, people who are from industry, if they want to enter into academia, they are valued. They are welcomed into the academic field. Reason being that B schools believe, the administration of B schools believe, which is right as well, that people who shift from industry to academia, they are going to bring with themselves tons of experience regarding how an industry works and what does the industry value in freshers.
Yeah.
So such
Yeah.
kind of people would be able to give a practical insight to the students about how they should prepare themselves, how the students should prepare themselves for the industry, how the industry is changing, and what are the facts and the key areas that they should focus upon. People who are just from the academic background, for example, me, I have not worked in the industry, so I know a lot about my subject. I know a lot about how the domains are evolving in terms of subject matter expertise and research. So obviously I can mentor my students in that sense, but then because I've not worked in an industry, so that practical insight is still missing in me, but those people can provide that practical insight. Now coming on to, is the process different for them or not? So number one, once the people who are shifting from industry want to enter into academia, I've never worked in that side of administration of a B school where I hire people, but jahan tak mujhe pata hai, their experience is something that is valued the most. Maybe their grad, post-grad marks and academic background is not valued that much. Maybe that is not given that much weightage, but their experience in the industry is something that I believe is definitely given weightage, number one. Number two, they are expected to start their PhD or be enrolled into a PhD, because if they are entering into academia, उनके लिए भी grow करने के लिए PhD important है. आप किसी भी बैकग्राउंड से आ रहे हो एकेडेमिया में, ग्रो अगर आपको करना है तो आपको पीएचडी करनी जरूरी है. यू शुड एनरोल योरसेल्फ इनटू अ पीएचडी एंड कंप्लीट योर पीएचडी एज सून एज पॉसिबल. सो दैट्स व्हाई द पीपल हु आर थिंकिंग ऑफ शिफ्टिंग, they have to get enrolled into a PhD. They should prove to the recruiters that they are shifting not just because they think that the academic career is a chill career, but because they want to guide the students, because they want they are interested in researching in their domain, and they're interested in giving back to the society through their teachings and research.
One question, how do you, so one is for you to constantly upskill yourself. These are, let's say you're doing up your PhD or your research, right? Which will again be one specific concept about the whole topic that you cover as a professor, right? What else do you do to ensure that you are constantly, upskilling yourself?
Okay, so upskilling takes place in two ways. One is obviously, as you said, in the domain that we are working, the research that we are doing. So if I'm doing my research in banking, I have to be up to date about what's happening in the banking sector, so that when I'm willing to do further research, I know about the gaps, I know how to proceed, and what is something that is trending and would be readable and of interest to the audience. The second is obviously related to my teaching. So I need to constantly upskill myself in terms of teaching. And when I say teaching, it does not just involve the content of the teaching, it also involves the teaching pedagogies. So when you compare pedagogies and content, both are important, but for me, pedagogy is something that I place a tad bit higher, on a higher pedestal. Reason being, content, बच्चा खुद भी कहीं से भी पढ़ लेगा. So you tell them that, see, something has happened recently, so you need to read up on it. So they can easily search it on Google. अब तो generative AI भी आ गया है, right? They can ask questions on Gen AI and then they can get answers and they can prepare themselves very well. So content is available. The same content that is available to you is available to them, whether you read it yourself and then go it out and tell to them, or you just give it to them and ask them to read it up. It's similar, right? But where you need to upskill yourself as a teacher is in terms of your pedagogical skills. Pedagogical skills means, how are you delivering your sessions? How are you interacting with your students? How are you making sure that whatever you are saying in the class or whatever you're doing in the class goes into their mind and just does not like pop, pop, pop and like this, right? So your pedagogy has to be innovative, it has to be interesting, it has to be relatable, and all of these things you have to do as a teacher while ensuring that the syllabus is also completed, the doubts are also being answered. So in that 1.5 hour class, you'll have to take care of a lot of things, which comes from practice, which comes from constantly upskilling yourself, and also comes from ensuring that you are very updated about the generation you are teaching, right? ऐसा ना हो जाए that आप
Yes.
millennial हो तो आप अपनी धुन में आप millennial का दिमाग में रख के कि हाँ millennials are very focused, they listen to whatever the teacher says, the teacher says no, the students will say okay ma'am. No, if you are teaching Gen Z, you'll have to come to their level, you'll have to first understand the mindset of the Gen Z, you'll have to see कि भाई उनको क्या
समझ आ रहा है.
किस तरह से उनको बोलना है so that it doesn't offend them.
Yeah.
And you're also able to respect their command, get their respect. So there's a lot of things that goes on into your mind when you're standing there and delivering a session. So yeah, and ये सब में upskilling चाहिए आपको. Whether understanding
Yeah.
about the Gen Z का mindset, whether understanding about the new innovations, whether understanding about how to deliver a session in a most entertaining, fun and humorous manner, because that's how Gen Z understands things now. So हाँ, इन सब में अब
Yeah.
भी करना ज्यादा जरूरी है.
What keeps you motivated when you have like a series of bad days?
Series of bad days. Okay. So I think I told this in another podcast also way back. So I must be having that in some of my cupboard. I have this small diary with me, in which I keep writing whatever good things happen with me. So I've been writing this since my graduation, since 2014 or 15. It's almost been 10 years. So whatever good things happened to me, for example, maybe I got admission into SRCC, I wrote it down. I got admission into the best commerce college of India and Asia. So yeah, it's a great thing. Then I got a scholarship. I scored good marks. I got a scholarship. So मैंने उसको लिखा. Then I became the president. I got admission into DSC for my masters. I became the president of the Rotary Club of DSC. I became the DRR. So every achievement that I think is something that fulfills some of my dreams or is something which is praiseworthy, I keep writing it down in that small diary that I have. And when I have a series of bad days, I just open that diary and I flip through the pages and I'm like, oh, मैंने इतना कुछ achieve किया है, फिर ये कुछ 4% तो क्या ही फर्क पड़ता है. So I think that's what keeps me going, and constantly remembering that you have achieved a lot, and a series of bad days are not going to erase any of those good things that you have got in your life by the blessings of God and by the blessings of everyone who's been around you. So then I think, yeah, I'm quite lucky and fortunate to be blessed. So yeah, it's fine.
Wow.
Wow, I think I will take back the aspect of you writing in your book. I think I need to start that.
I was going to say that probably I'll also do this because I think as human beings, we always have the habit of we'll set a goal, we'll achieve the goal, and then we'll go on to the next goal, right?
Yes.
Forget what we have achieved so far. And I think this is a great way to constantly remind us of what we are capable of
Yes.
and how grateful we are for whatever we have at the moment and keep going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everyone who's listening, you should follow this. It's
Yeah.
transformed my life. You know what Toshika said about being grateful, it's actually important. You should be grateful for what you achieved, because just forgetting that and saying वो तो पहले का किया हुआ है ना, तो पहले में एनर्जी थी तो मैंने अचीव कर लिया. No, there was some divine things that were happening at that point of time, and you should be grateful for that. So yeah, always keep reminding yourself.
So Vardha, how can students make the best of their college days based on your experience?
Okay. So I think depending upon, so when you're talking about college, you need to specify you're talking about UG or PG, because the answers would be very different for UG and PG.
I think we should go with both.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so if we talk about UG, before the NEP came about, we had UG usually lasts for about 3 years. So when students ask me, how do we, when should we start thinking about our career, and when should we focus on our studies, and when should we have fun? So I usually tell them then to make the most out of your 3 years of UG. You should, maybe in the first half of the first year, focus on just enjoying your newly found freedom. You have cleared your examinations of 12th,
Yeah.
right? You have struggled, you worked hard in your school to get an admission into maybe a good college of your choice, wherever it is. So the first half of the first year, just enjoy, just chill, get to know your fellow students, get to know your teachers, get to know your institution, your university, whatever it is, get to know about how the courses are structured, and explore. If usually a lot of students move from their hometown to a new city when they are taking admission into colleges, so explore the city, right? Make yourself familiar with the places around. So just enjoy, let yourself free, give yourself that freedom to use that time to just chill, enjoy, and become familiar with things around you and people around you. From the second half of the first year, start building the thing in your mind that, see, from the second year onwards, you are going to get engaged in a lot of things like society, position of responsibilities. Societies come into position the first year, but in the second year, you start taking up positions of responsibility. So in the second year onwards, you would know that you'll have position of responsibilities. You will be concerned about your internships. You'll be concerned about your grades. So in the second half of the first year, just prepare yourself and start focusing a bit on academics if you had not been doing before. Obviously, I'm not saying कि first half of the first year में बिल्कुल ही discount कर दो, बिल्कुल ही छो ही मत किताबों को. But अगर अभी तक नहीं कर रहे थे, तो second half of the first year is when you need to start focusing कि भाई क्या पढ़ाई थी, क्या पढ़ा है, and how it's going to impact your scores. Because graduation में scores matter करते हैं. Specifically in the first year when you don't know कि आपको क्या career path लेना है. अगर आप third year के बाद realize करते हो कि आपको academics में जाना है, आपको academia में जाना है, आपके scores बहुत important हो गए, and maybe by that time you're too late to improve your scores, right? Placement, maybe sometimes scores are important. Maybe if you want to go to some other area like your own entrepreneurship, startup, etc., maybe in that case scores don't matter. But then before the third year, you're not very sure about what career path you want to take. So that's how you need to place yourself in the second half of the first year. Then in the second year, it's all about your dedication to your work, and your work includes finding good internships. If you are looking forward to good placements in the future, this is the time that you need to work on your internships, building up your CV through position of responsibility. कोई live project चल रहा है तो live project लो, कोई additional hustle करनी है तो करो. Second year is where you want to push yourself harder. ठीक है, because third year में आके वो नहीं हो पाता है उतना ज्यादा. Second year is the time where you need to push yourself, and you'll also feel you'll also feel competitive. Right? A lot of students I see second year में आके बहुत competitive हो जाते हैं, and जो नहीं होते, then a lot of them also start feeling that inferiority complex. मेरा तो ये दोस्त ने CE का एग्जाम दिया, वो तो ये कोचिंग में जा रहा है, वो तो ये इंटर्नशिप कर रहा है, मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ. So I've seen a lot of students face this. So second year is the time when you work on yourself. If you're not doing internships, PRR, etc., do not worry. Upskill yourself. Maybe choose online courses of your choice and upskill yourself. Your CV building majorly takes place in your second year of college, right? And then is the third year when is the time when everyone is having an eye on you regarding what have you thought about your career. So it's not just your teachers, your friends, your relatives, your cousins, your siblings, everyone is like eyeing on you कि अच्छा बेटा आगे क्या सोचा है, अच्छा बच्चे आगे क्या सोचा है. So we don't want you to be pressurized in that period. Third is the time when you sit with yourself, introspect, right? Hustle आपने बहुत कर लिया, बहुत कुछ काम कर लिया, CV building आपकी हो चुकी है, हो भी रही होगी third year में आते आते. Now, third year is a time where you introspect, when you think that what have I done in the previous 2 years, what I liked, what I did not like, what have I observed around me. If I've done some internships, did I like it? Did I like the kind of atmosphere? Is it the kind of industry I would like to enter into? Or maybe I have some totally different crazy idea in my mind that I want to step into through some startup, entrepreneurial venture, or maybe I just want to get a placement in a good high paying job. So in the third year is the time when you introspect, you observe what other people are doing, your seniors. You talk to your seniors, you talk to people who are professionals, who are in the industry, who are into different career paths, and then you calmly take a decision, or you make a list of alternatives for yourself, right? This is not the time to get pressurized, no matter how many pressuring elements are there around you. This is the time to calm yourself down and introspect and observe and do all those alternative screening process, so that when the time of placement start, when your final examinations come and you are pushed कि अब तो डिग्री मिलने वाली है, अब तो कब कॉन्वोकेशन होने वाला है, at least by that time you have 2-3 options in your mind regarding what you want to do, if not one, at least 2-3. और अगर वो भी नहीं है, एटलीस्ट ये दिमाग में क्लैरिटी हो कि ये तो बिल्कुल नहीं करना है. अगर ये क्लैरिटी नहीं है कि क्या करना है, एटलीस्ट ये क्लैरिटी होनी चाहिए कि ये 3 चीजें तो बिल्कुल नहीं करनी है. एंड मे बी इफ यू स्टिल नॉट श्योर, टेक अ ड्रॉप ईयर, राइट? सो आई थिंक दिस इज हाउ यू नीड टू डिवाइड योर 3 years ऑफ कॉलेज. एनईपी का मैं ज्यादा नहीं बोल सकती. एनईपी में वो 3 साल 4 साल आ गया और अब मैं उस सिस्टम से बाहर निकल चुकी हूँ. मैं एनईपी का ना पार्ट हूँ, ना मैं पढ़ा रही हूँ एनईपी वाले बच्चों को. सो इट्स अ बिट डिफिकल्ट फॉर मी टू कमेंट ऑन दैट. As far as PG is concerned, it's very rigorous. आप आपके पास कोई टाइम नहीं है पीजी में कुछ करने का, ठीक है? मतलब अगेन दिस इज आउट ऑफ माई लिमिटेड एक्सपीरियंस. आई हैव बीन टीचिंग पीजी स्टूडेंट्स ओनली फॉर द पास्ट 1.5 years, and what I've seen is the course is very rigorous. It's very comprehensive. You are bombarded with so many assignments, internal examinations, quizzes, so on and so forth. And then you have the constant pressure कि यार मुझे co-curricular activities में भी perform करना है अच्छा, and upskilling भी करनी है, certification courses भी करने हैं. So the 2 years of PG, if you are doing an MBA or a PGDM, I'm not talking about any other MA or MCOM, because again, बहुत डिफर करेगा वो, ठीक है? स्पेसिफिकली इफ यू डूइंग इट फ्रॉम यूनिवर्सिटी, बिकॉज मैंने एमकॉम करी है तो मुझे पता है मैंने कैसे चिल होके करी है. सो इट डजंट अप्लाई टू एमकॉम डेफिनेटली. बट इफ यू टॉकिंग अबाउट अ एमबी और अ पीजीडीएम, योर एंटायर 2 years, you need to remember that to make the most out of it, stay calm but then hustle, because maybe for most of the students इन 2 सालों के बाद आप और कुछ पढ़ाई नहीं करोगे, unless and until you want to enter into academia. Only then will you go forward with a PhD degree and maybe a postdoc after that. अगर academia में नहीं आना है, खुद का कुछ करना है या बिजनेस में कंट्रीब्यूट करना है, कॉर्पोरेट में जाना है, तो उन 2 सालों के बाद मोस्ट प्रोबेबली यू आर नॉट गोइंग टू परस्यू अनदर हायर डिग्री. दीज 2 are the years जहां पे आपको रिगर पुट करना पड़ेगा, चाहे वो आपके ग्रेड्स में हो, चाहे वो आपके सर्टिफिकेशन कोर्सेज में हो, चाहे इंटर्नशिप्स में हो, लाइव प्रोजेक्ट्स में हो. आपको वो करना पड़ेगा बिकॉज the environment is very competitive. The competition does not just come from your own institute, it comes from other institutions जहां पे there's a lot of creamy people, students in India, okay? So everyone is super competitive, so that's why you need to place yourself among that entire group of people. And that's why in 2 सालों में do not, मतलब take a break, but do not ever think that अब आप पीछे हटके 1 महीना chill और relax कर सकते हो. Because I've seen students जो अपने internship के टाइम पे सोचते हैं बड़ी सिंपल सी इंटर्नशिप है, जो मुझे बोला जाता है मैं एग्जाम काम कर लेता हूँ 2 घंटे में, उसके बाद तो चिल ही चिल है, नेटफ्लिक्स एंड चिल है. I tell my students, यार ये गलती मत करना. If you have time in your internship, invest it into something, whether it's again certification courses or doing an additional project which will make you stand out from the rest of your peers. And if you do that, you can, from my side, you can guarantee yourself a good placement. If not on campus, definitely an off campus placement. So PG के टाइम पे, मास्टर्स के टाइम पे, वो दो साल आपने ग्रेजुएशन में जितना एंजॉय कर लिया, वो 2 साल आपको रिगर देना है. एकेडमिक्स में भी अपने रिगर देना है, एक्स्ट्रा करिकुलम में भी देना है, और अपस्किलिंग में भी आपको अपना बेस्ट देना है.
I think before I say anything, I want Akhila to share from the other side of a PG student.
So you done your PGDM?
No, I'm still doing. I'm in my first year of MBA.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. I would like to listen to the student side as well.
Yeah.
I'm a little overwhelmed and I don't have anything to say.
Overwhelmed by what I said, or overwhelmed by what your
Overwhelmed by
course?
what you said. I was like, hey Ram, मुझे ये भी करना है, ये भी करना है, ये भी करना. So I think from what I've seen is people who have like less than 2 years of work ex or are freshers, they are generally more towards the academic side. I mean, that's just based out of my sample experience. They are more based towards the academics and co-curricular activities and everything. Whereas what I see, people who have, say, more than 2 years or more than 3 years of work ex, They are very focused on what they want out of this MBA. That is, it could be upskilling, it could be just chilling for 2 years and not doing anything. It could be something as simple as they want to try out some new hobby, an entrepreneurial journey while doing their MBA. So that is where I see, and that's where even I personally get confused कि क्या follow करना है. Because until UG you had a specified path कि ये करना है, ये करना है, ये करना है और ये करना है. अब मुझे खुद डिसाइड करना पड़ रहा है कि what should I do.
Adulting is hard. You become an adult and you're like यार मुझे खुद डिसाइड करना पड़ेगा, अब कोई मुझे बताएगा नहीं कि बेटा यही पढ़ना है, यही एग्जाम में आएगा, इसके बाद यही कोर्स पढ़ाया जाएगा, यही कंपनी आएगी. That's where PG is hard. So when I told you about PG, you gave a very good perspective. It's going to be different for the people who have some industry experience and for those who do not, who are freshers. So my perspective was totally from the point of view of freshers, जिनको experience नहीं है, and the fact that they enrolled into a PG program, they want a degree, yes, but they're also expecting a good ROI on their time and efforts and money, right? They enroll into, because if they're not done a job, if they're done their graduation and then maybe they came to a PG program, or they took a break and then came to a PG program, right? Which means that not having industry experience means that they are still not fully clear about the kind of domain they want to enter themselves into, right? That's what an internship is supposed to do. But before that internship also, I have seen first year students being totally confused about their specializations also. उनको ये नहीं पता उनको फाइनेंस ज्यादा पसंद है या मार्केटिंग ज्यादा पसंद है या एचआर ज्यादा पसंद है या एनालिटिक्स ज्यादा पसंद है, उसी में वो कंफ्यूज है. उसके बाद व्हेन दे टेक देयर स्पेशलाइजेशन देन दे आर कंफ्यूज अबाउट देयर इलेक्टिव्स. अच्छा फाइनेंस तो ले लिया, अब इसने फाइनेंशियल मार्केट्स लिए या कॉर्पोरेट फाइनेंस लिए या सो that's why I said that यहाँ पे बच्चों के लिए, so teachers are always there to guide, but then बच्चों के लिए खुद के लिए वो research करना by talking to their seniors, by talking to the industry professionals about the kind of profiles that they're coming in and the kind of profiles that they would like to work in, it's very important. And तभी वो mapping हो पाएगी ठीक से कि कौन सा profile किस elective किस specialization से match करता है. क्योंकि first year के बाद when the specialization electives is done and then you want to change it, you can change it, but then the kind of justification that you're supposed to give for that changing, that becomes little suspicious. तो इसलिए वो रिगर घुसाना बहुत जरूरी है. जो भी आप चीज सेलेक्ट कर रहे हो, चूज कर रहे हो, कुछ भी कर रहे हो, उसमें आपको बहुत रिगर घुसाना पड़ता है. बट yes, for the people who have an experience, they may have a totally different perspective of enrolling into a postgraduate program. It can be as simple as just getting a degree, that's it. डिग्री लेनी थी बस, काम तो मुझे आता ही करना, सेम जगह जाके या कहीं और जगह जाके काम तो मैं कर ही लूंगा, ठीक है, समझ लिया काम कैसे करना है. इट्स जस्ट अ डिग्री दैट आई वांट, सो दैट मे बी थोड़ा पैकेज बढ़ जाएगा व्हाटएवर. सो that's there for a small proportion of people. Yes, I discounted them. But it's there.
So I got placed into McKinsey after college, right? But McKinsey didn't come to my college as for hiring. They came for an off-campus thing where there were students from a lot of other colleges as well. And until that time, MCK only hired from Sukhdev in my team specifically, right? I mean, see, it's McKinsey. They'll come to SRCC, they'll go to Sukhdev, they might go to Hindu, but they will not come to Gargi. Let's be honest, right?
Right, I know.
So in my interview process, during the process, first round was a technical written round and like an interview, first 2 rounds. After that, it was all behavioral. They're asking me, let's say you were given the situation where your team was against you because you were in a society. How did you handle that situation? Or they're asking me more and more about my internships. So that's when I realized that is not just to put something on the CV, but those experiences are very important because that's what matters after a point of time. Your academics are very, very important because that's the first step for you to get in. But after those 3 rounds that I had of behavioral interviews, and that's when I realized that, thank God, I did all of that. And but I think, yes, that's very, very important in today's world.
That's true.
Vardha, when you see UG students, right? there would be groups of students, that is, some people who are completely focused on academics, some who have a mixture of, say, average in academics, maybe at around 80% or so, but participate a lot in co-curricular activities. And then there are some people who may not concentrate that much throughout the class. How do you see them fare after maybe 2, 3 years of UG? Like, do you think that there is a cause and effect relationship from classroom to that life?
To be very honest, to answer this question, because I'm a researcher, I'll have to run a regression, maybe collect the data and then run it into a software, and then I'll be able to come with a ठोस answer. But let me tell you that there have been studies on, not specifically for UG, but there have been studies on the cause and effect relationship between your CAT scores and your final placements, the kind of placements that you get, the kind of packages that you get, and there's no relationship between them. So I can safely say that there is, with the kind of diversity of students that we get, whether they focus in the class, the kind of grades that they get, the kind of rigor that they put in their examinations, whether it finally leads them to the kind of dream that they thought of, the kind of careers that they thought of, is only slightly related, right? Just because you're not attending classes, just because you do not have good scores, and you have been, जिसको हम बोलते हैं बवंडरी मार रहे हैं, actually में वो बवंडरी नहीं होती, they are getting some other exposures, maybe by networking, etc. Just because you are that kind of a person does not mean you will not enter into a career, or you will not go into something that you really wanted to do. Because as you said, at the end of the day, it's a combination of a lot of factors that go into deciding what kind of career path best suits you, and what kind of career you get into. And then even after getting into that career, or the kind of success that you thought about yourself, whether you're changing your direction altogether, or you're switching to a different kind of career or not, right? So ये cause and effect तभी तक valid है जब तक when you take admission into a UG program, you are very clear कि भाई 3 साल के बाद मेरे को तो यही चाहिए. अगर आपको पता है यूजी में एंटर करते टाइम कि भाई मुझे तो प्रोफेसर ही बनना है, तो आप शुरू से ही सारा फोकस किस पे रखोगे? अपने एकेडमिक्स पे, और दूसरा मे बी योर कम्युनिकेशन एंड पब्लिक स्पीकिंग. दैट्स इट. यू डू नॉट नीड एनी काइंड ऑफ maybe team player kind of a thing. So maybe you won't get yourself enrolled into a lot of societies. You don't need any kind of internships as such for industry exposures, because that's not the kind of corporate career that you're looking into. But वो तभी होगा जब आपको पहले टाइम, पहली क्लास से ही, पहले डे से ही क्लियर है कि मेरे को तो यही करना है, which is not the case for majority of the students. So it's okay to use that time, whether inside the class or outside the class, to explore. ठीक है? आपको नहीं पता कि वो एक्सप्लोरेशन, वो इंसाइट, वो रिफ्लेक्शन, वो कब आपके दिमाग पे गिरे. क्लास में बैठे बैठे गिरे, क्लास अटेंड करते हुए मिले, या बाहर मिले, या वॉशरूम पे मिले, या कैंटीन में खाना खाते हुए मिले, या सोसाइटी में काम करते हुए मिले, किसी से बात करते हुए मिले. यू डोंट नो कि वो कब एनलाइटनमेंट आपको आ जाए, यूरेका मोमेंट सॉर्ट ऑफ थिंग, राइट? सो इट्स ओके टू let yourself be free and explore. And I don't think there's a very core, straightforward relationship between focusing, getting good grades, and finally getting the kind of career that you thought is the best fit for you, because that can also change. That end result can also change in your mind. तो इसलिए निराश नहीं होना है. मतलब ऐसे बहुत सारे बच्चे ना निराश हो जाते हैं कि उसके तो बड़े अच्छे मार्क्स हैं, मेरे तो बड़े अच्छे मार्क्स नहीं है. भाई मेहनत कर लो, आ जाएंगे मार्क्स, बट it's nothing to do with finally what you get at the end of your 3 years, or at the end of your post-graduation degree.
Yeah. I mean, have that trust, that faith in yourself.
Yes.
You will get where you want.
Yes.
So I think maybe I have like one last question on academia. What trends do you predict that will impact this industry in the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay, so the one major trend that keeps coming up and that we keep talking about, that's going to impact academia, institutions, and teachers the most, is AI, obviously, right? Obviously, ये सिर्फ academia को impact नहीं कर रहा है, तो हर industry को impact कर रहा है. But then it's very relevant for us, because we, as teachers, we are supposed to have the knowledge and then share that knowledge in an interesting and relevant manner with the students, right? But when we know that this knowledge can easily be, easily, they can easily get hold of this knowledge using generative AI, even if it's something which is not easily available on Google. On Google also, they'll have to search and click on the relevant links and then find that knowledge, whether they are doing an assessment or writing an essay. Now they can do it very easily through a click of a button. So for us as academicians, the content that we are teaching, the kind of evaluations that we are taking, the kind of invigilations that we are doing at the kind of examinations, that has changed a lot. To give you an example, when we think about doing our evaluations, it starts from a basic assignment. If you give an assignment, even if it's an assignment which is different for every single student, they are you going to use generative AI. So we have to now ensure that we run the assignments through a suitable plagiarism checker, which also checks for AI. And then we have to take an additional layer, additional rules and regulations, that if the AI comes up to be this person, then your assignment would not be considered, or this much marks would be deducted. So an additional burden for us as teachers during the time of evaluation. Even if we talk about the end term evaluations, we thought of shifting. We actually started shifting towards online examinations because it saves a lot of paper and it saves a lot of time for the students as well as the teachers while evaluating. Now, what we found that in online examinations, even if you disconnect them from the internet, even when it's an intranet based examination, students find some other way to use AI and incorporate that in their end-term examination when there are two teachers standing and continuously invigilating inside the classroom. So I think that the students have, I don't know, their focus has now shifted from what to learn for the examination to how to find the loopholes in the examination system to answer the questions without studying, without even knowing what the syllabus is all about. So we as academicians and in the academic area will have to bring into place some checks and balances. We'll have to become even more innovative in order to ensure that our students are learning, and at the same time they're learning with AI. They're using AI in their learnings and assignment assessment, but in a way which is not hampering their intellectual stimulation and their creativity and their imaginations. So that's why we have now introduced courses where they're supposed to use AI in their assessments, but we tell them that AI से हमें यही आंसर चाहिए, तो आप सोचो कि AI को कैसे यूज करोगे कि यही आंसर आए. What kind of questions are you supposed to ask from AI to ensure that you get the correct, accurate answer, which is not hallucinated kind of an answer, right? So हम अब ये expect कर अपने students से, करो जी भर के यूज करो AI, बट हमें आंसर ये चाहिए. तो अब relevant question पूछो कि सही scenario based answer आए, so that when you become managers and when you are in a decision making area, तो AI से पूछ भी रहे हो तो बिल्कुल ही रिलाई मत कर लेना AI पे. सोच समझ के उसके साथ बात करके सही सिनेरियो बेस्ड आंसर निकाल के then solve the problem that you're facing as a manager or whatever position that you are in. So that's a big change that we are facing, and continuously we are having to, as academicians, we're having to evolve ourselves also to accept this fact that अब जो हम बोल रहे हैं maybe वो उनके लिए इतना महत्वपूर्ण नहीं है. हम उनको ये बताना है कि use कैसे करना है टेक्नोलॉजी को, so that they can even get better answers from better than what we can help them with, better than what we can answer them.
Yeah.
So yeah, big change.
I also had a question. So, is it possible that with the use of Gen AI, as much as it is helpful, at least what I see or observe is, जब कुछ जल्दीबाजी में खत्म करना होता है, even to the process of thinking, say we have to read a case study रीड करने के लिए टाइम नहीं है, तो उसके लिए भी हम लोग AI का यूज कर लेते हैं तब. So somewhere the process of me introspecting, me thinking of it, me even coming up with very outlier types of question has diminished. How do you think as a person, like eventually, because there will be a lot of AI that will be used everywhere, I cannot let that prospect get hampered.
See, it's true whatever you said, that it's hampering our as I said, imagination, creativity, and intellectual simulation. Because if you want to read something, you just put it into AI and tell it summarize करके क्रक्स बता दो मुझे क्या है, so that अगर कोई मुझसे पूछे तो मैं बता पाऊँ उसको. That's what I want. Because we are focusing too much on convenience now, right? We are using AI for the purpose of convenience. There's a very small percentage of students who are actually using AI for the purpose of enhancing their own mental capabilities, their own potential, and their own learnings. बहुत ही कम students हैं, करते हैं, but बहुत कम students हैं. Most of us are using AI just for the convenience purpose and for saving time. और उस time को हम कहाँ use कर रहे हैं मुझे पता नहीं, मुझे खुद नहीं पता वो time कहाँ जा रहा है, वो नेटफ्लिक्स करने में जा रहा है या इंस्टाग्राम रील्स स्क्रॉल करने में जा रहा है. ठीक है, तो अब what you said कि I don't want it to hamper my way to introspect, my way of thinking. So उसके लिए ना एक ही तरीका है कि आप खुद से अपने लिए एक गाइडलाइन बना लो. बिकॉज टीचर आपको बोलेगी कि भाई एआई नहीं यूज करना, तब तो आप बिल्कुल ही यूज करोगे एआई. ठीक है, तो आप खुद के लिए एक गाइडलाइन बना लो कि भाई आई विल यूज एआई, बट देन जहां पे मुझे ये करना हो, जहां मुझे कोई ऐसा स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चन है जहां पे मैंने 10 मिनट सोच लिया, उसके बाद भी मुझे कुछ आइडियाज नहीं आ रहे, आई विल आस्क एआई टू जनरेट सम आइडियाज फॉर मी एंड देन आई विल वर्क ऑन दोज आइडियाज माई सेल्फ. ठीक है, or maybe if I have been given a case study and I have a questions in that case study, गाइडलाइन बना लो. केस स्टडी मैं खुद पढ़ूंगा, एक क्वेश्चन नहीं समझ आया फिर केस उसको दूंगा कि भाई अब ये केस मैंने पढ़ लिया है, फिर भी एक क्वेश्चन मेरे को समझ नहीं आया, अब तू पढ़ केस, तू सिंप्लीफाई कर केस. ठीक है, सिंप्लीफाइड वर्जन मुझे दे, सो दैट आई एम इन अ बेटर पोजीशन टू आंसर दिस क्वेश्चन. द ओनली प्रॉब्लम इज कि खुद के लिए ऐसे गाइडलाइन बनाना बड़ा मुश्किल है. बिकॉज वंस यू हैव कन्वीनियंस on one side, when you have something which helps you at the click of a button on one side versus something which makes you use your mind, your energy, makes you put your time into that, यहाँ का थोड़ा ना ये वेटेज इसकी ज्यादा हो जाती है. This seems more better to move forward with. तो इसलिए अपने लिए guidelines बनाना on how to use AI, when to use AI, why to use AI, and what purposes to use AI, it becomes very difficult, but that has to come from you. Nobody can put a pressure on you to do that or not do that. ठीक है, बाकी तो फिर लास्ट तरीके है एआई बनती हो जाए, जो कोई होने तो वाला नहीं है. अब वी कैन नॉट गो टू द caveman's time up. ठीक है, technology is going to involve, AI is going to evolve a lot, so things are going to become much more convenient now. So we just need to restrict ourselves, which is difficult but doable.
Just a last point on this from my end is that I think as of now, what I see is the simple aspect of paraphrasing someone else's thoughts, or the simple aspect of, say, कोई भी class हुई या कोई भी book भी मैंने पढ़ा, the simple aspect of summarizing and being able to tell it to a friend, that itself is where it is glitching for us humans, is what I'm observing as of now.
Yes, glitching in the sense that it's not working out, or is working out in your favor.
It's not working out, as in people aren't able to summarize things properly because
Okay, because too much reliance on
yes,
AI.
yes,
That's true.
yeah.
The other day saw a LinkedIn post about a person who said that he saw his nephew using AI to get answers to all the questions, and that's where the nephew, like a 9-year-old nephew, is learning. But what this person noticed is, because it's an AI, there is no emotions to it, right? So whatever the AI is telling the nephew to do, the kid is doing it because it's like very young, right? But the kid is not learning those emotions, is not learning those abilities to take decisions, to problem solve. You just ask, you get an answer. So the kid has become used to actually sort of becoming a robot, where you're just asking, there's a question, answer, do this, right? And that's a scary future.
It is so scary because so even if you sit in an interview and you give whatever the questions are there in the interview and you give it to ChatGPT, it's going to give you the answers. But if you just say those answers, you are not going to be selected, because the way you say, the kind of emotions you put into those answers, the kind of anecdotes you use, that's something that matters in your final placement or whatever, for whatever purpose you're giving that interview for.
Yeah.
And I don't think AI can teach that unless and until we have robots which have that facial expressions to show those emotions, which is I don't think that's a far-fetched idea either. So I don't know what will happen in the future, whether we will also get replaced as a teacher. अभी तो हम replace नहीं होने वाले because we are very emotional, right? Future में there are robot teachers, then there's a chance with facial expressions, with the better ability to crack jokes and Bollywood anecdotes in the class. So maybe then we get replaced as teachers. Anything can happen. So it's just that how much we can restrict ourselves and our younger generation specifically, because हमने तो फिर भी थोड़ा बहुत experience कर रखा है वो rigor. The younger generation who are just in school and they using AI is even more dangerous.
Yeah, yeah.
So Varda, focusing on the public speaking aspect of yours, I believe you have also been a TEDx speaker. So could you take us through the journey of how you got invited, how you prepared, how was the experience talking over there, interacting with people over there and the audience?
Okay, so I have been a TEDx speaker for 2 events. One was the TEDx FIIB in Delhi, and the second was TEDx IIM Amritsar. So TEDx FIIB, I was nominated. So whenever someone organizes a TEDx event, either they select their speakers themselves, they're the curation team which selects the speakers themselves and invites them, or they may open a nomination form. So I was nominated for the TEDx FIIB. Now the process there was totally different because it was a nomination and they got a lot of nominations. So they had a screening process. So as far as I remember the process, they first asked me to send a write-up about myself. Then they asked me to record a video speaking on the theme that was decided by them. So it was a 1.5 minutes video. And then they finally got me on board to interact with me. So it was a kind of an interview. Why do I think I can influence the audience? Why do I think the theme that I'm speaking on is important, or my story is important to be told, or how it's going to move people around, especially the youngsters? So there were these 3-4 rounds of screening. And then I just received an email that we would like to now invite you. You have been we think you can be one of the TEDx speakers and all that stuff. So that was one way. For TEDx, then I'll come to the experience later. So then was TEDx IIM Amritsar, for which I was directly contacted on LinkedIn. So one of the persons from the curation team, which was a student, they contacted me and they told me that, ma'am, this is the theme, and we saw your profile, we saw your previous TEDx talk, and we found that you are one of the persons who can actually speak on this theme and create a relevant story around this theme. So, and then they just invited me and told me the place, etc., and they shared all the other details with me, and the simple invitation was there.
Okay.
So these are the two methods. If there's a third method, I'm not aware of the same. Then, as far as the experience is concerned, it was good. Obviously, I had to prepare a talk which I can blabber on about for 15 to 18 minutes. So, theme was given to me. So every TEDx talk, TEDx event has a theme. So for both of the events, I was given a theme. I created a story around it, and obviously it had to be a genuine story, because otherwise it would have been a made-up story. I would have definitely forgotten it on the stage. So I created a script, keeping that story into mind, and I revisited, revised it a lot of times, and I practiced and rehearsed it a lot of times. And then finally, I just went there and spoke about it, right? We just have that PPT. If we want, we can just use PowerPoint presentation for ourselves to keep our audience interested. Otherwise, we can just speak without a PPT. So this was the same for both of them. Created a script, rehearsed, and then went on the stage and talked about it. As far as the overall experience is concerned, it was great because I got to meet a lot of other speakers from different backgrounds. Hearing their story was one thing. When they're on the stage and you're sitting in the audience, or you're just watching a YouTube video, it's one thing. But then when you're actually interacting with them, you get to know a lot of nuances and nitty-gritties from their stories, which they could not share on the stage in front of the audience. And that's even more interesting. So getting to know that side of the story, getting to know that side of their personality and their lives, it was very intriguing. It was very, I say, fascinating for me. And then obviously the audience, it's not shown on YouTube, but when you get off the stage and when there's a break, the audience comes to you and they are very interested to know other things about your story. So आपने ही बताया था आप यहाँ गए थे आपने ऐसे बात की थी बट उसके बाद क्या हुआ फिर आप उनसे वापस मिले फिर आप वापस गए ओ माय गॉड इनको 10-15 मिनट की स्टोरी में इतना इंटरेस्ट आ गया ना दे वांट टू नो द सीक्वल टू दैट so that was also very fun when the audience interacts with you and they ask follow-up question. So overall, the experience was amazing. Hospitality is also very top-notch. It was great at both the institutions, and I had a lot of fun. It was a great experience.
I think overall, when I look back on the entire discussion over here, one I have seen is that when it comes to you, right? Academic rigor, I think, is a very important first step for a lot of us, especially when it comes to India. Second, the aspect is that just because we have academic rigor doesn't mean कि उसके अंदर ही पूरा घुल जाना है. It also means that you have to develop other skills on the side as well.
Yes.
And in developing those other skills, I think public speaking and networking not only in the sense कि oh ये मेरा connect है, but networking in the sense कि आप relationship build कर रहे हो. There is something where you can either help the person connect to someone else or you're adding to the person's life something. So I think these are the three aspects I'm gonna take away, and especially the most important is your smile and to always keep smiling.
So sweet. Thank you so much.
How did you find the entire experience?
I found it amazing. मेरे को बहुत सारी सी चीजें recall हुई, whether it's about Rotaract or TEDx or about my maybe school days also. A lot of things that I was able to remember in the process of conversation. So overall, I think it was a good Saturday spent. अच्छा हुआ मैं धूप में नहीं गई because this was more stimulating for me. So I had a good time. Thank you so much, Toshika and Akhila, once again for having me and making me speak out my thoughts, which I hope again can reach up to the people who were looking forward to some kind of guidance in this area. And obviously, I'm open for any future kind of questions that might arise from the audience, offline, online, whatever, through LinkedIn or any other ways. So yeah, it was great. I had fun.
Yeah.
How did you find the experience, Toshika?
Yeah, I think so I know Vardha for a while, but I think I didn't see a lot of this side of her because we didn't like properly get to work together in detail or even talk to each other. But I think at such a young age, you are truly an inspiration. And now because you are an inspiration for a lot of people at Rotary, but now I see why you are, right? And I think this is one of the most, I think, a podcast where people can take back a lot in terms of the learnings and things, especially students can take back a lot from this, and I do hope they do. And yeah, I think it was amazing. This is and probably one of our longest as well. And and it was just, I don't know where the time went, and it was amazing speaking with you, and thank you so much taking our time sitting with us here today. I think at the end of the day, we have a class, like it's important to understand how, how do you, is the world of a professor, right? Nowadays, when you were talking, I could remember some of the memes coming through. For instance, there was this one meme where it said that, during the examination, my professor said, "Hey Siri," and 5 phones buzzed up and they are getting right? So we get these memes from the student side of things, right? But we don't understand the reality from the professor side of things also, how they are putting in effort for our growth at the end. In the end, right? You are not getting benefit out of it. We are. So this was I think very, very it opened my brain to a lot of things. Thank you so much.
So glad to hear this.